Hello and welcome to the SDRealness Podcast, brought to you by Sales Development Revolution, where we talk with practitioners about their take on important topics in the space. I'm Alex Ellison, and here with me is my co-host, Grayson Fulbright.
Hey.
In this series, we're focused on becoming a leader in the SDR role. And today we're going to take you through one person's transition from SDR to SDR manager and what lessons he learned going through that process. That person is today's guest, Matt Reuter, Sales Development Manager at RealPage. Thanks so much for hopping on with us, Matt.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. This project is really near and dear to my heart. As an SDR, I wish I would have had something like this to be able to learn from. So I'm really excited to be here.
Awesome. Yeah, glad to have you, Matt. So I want to frame the conversation a bit to kick things off, because I think a lot of people are just behind you and kind of where you are in your role, where they might be in a leadership position as a team lead as an SDR, or maybe they've kind of like risen as a potential for a promotion within the organization. So I wanted to get your take on kind of what that experience was like going from SDR to actually managing SDRs. What were the steps involved? Did you get any support? Just kind of walk us through your experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really important. For people who don't know my story, I didn't set out to be an SDR or an SDR manager or, in sales really to begin with. It all started in college, where I was trying to become a dentist. And I actually went through, all of the shadowing and the schooling and the tests and everything that's involved with that, and didn't get in my first round. And I thought, hey, sales is something that I'm passionate about. It's something that I enjoy doing. It's not going to take 4 years and thousands of dollars in debt in order to accomplish that goal. So that led me into my SDR career. And so I started as an SDR at a telecom company. And I didn't know anything about networking or security or cold calling or prospecting or anything. And so I was just kind of thrown into it. And I fell in love with it. I fell in love with the competitiveness of chasing the deal, of trying to convince somebody to take a call with you and explain the value and overcome objections. I started as an inbound SDR. So I was taking inbound marketing leads, turning them into appointments and throwing them to the sales team. And then we decided that we were going to try an outbound program and true prospecting. This was really before the days of Discover.org being what it is today. It was you had LinkedIn and you had this little Chrome extension that gave you an email address that could potentially be right, and you had to go work your way through the organization and figure that out. And so through that, we started an ABM process. And we started an account-based marketing model to where we were given lists of accounts, and we had to go out and find the right people to talk to at those accounts. And I just, I looked at that as a puzzle. I looked at it as a treasure hunt to find the right person and to figure out how do I get my way in the organization. And I fell in love with that too. And so we decided that was a much more economical way to use the SDR program. And so at that point I was promoted to a team lead, in which I had to bring up the program. I had to develop a prospecting strategy and, work with my director at the time to put together a plan for how we're going to penetrate these accounts. And then, after that, I had been doing a lot of the manager role as a team lead. I took a lot of initiative. I started leading, team trainings. I started developing skills using SalesLoft, and to where I became a SalesLoft expert. And, by the time that position as manager became available, I was the next best choice. And it was like, why would we go outside? Why not just give Matt a shot? And so, now being at RealPage, this is my third team to lead in the SDR role. And I really love the top of the funnel process and just that whole part of the sales cycle. And so anyway, that's kind of my story. That's how I got to where I am today.
Awesome. Yeah, I really love that. And it really points out the initiative that I think you have to take as an SDR to level up, because, most people, they think about working, you said you're working with your director, and a lot of people, have trouble just working with the direct managers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was like a kind of a big moment for you, I imagine, kind of taking that step up and being willing to be uncomfortable there.
Right.
Yeah, and I think you touched on some interesting things there about really taking control of some of those management aspects before you were really a manager, right? You're just a team lead, and it's a very common role among sales development teams, but every organization sort of has a different role and responsibilities for those team leads. So a lot of times you can be a team lead and then, your manager is still micromanaging, things like that. So I think that's a really important thing to note that you were able to do, is really take advantage and see where there were maybe some gaps as this, outbound process was sort of growing and being developed, and jump in to fill in those gaps without, needing the promotion or needing the validation that, like, hey, can you call me a manager, right? Sort of doing the role before you get the, the title or the acclaim for it. And so that was an awesome thing you were doing. I want to sort of spin this around and dive into maybe some of the bigger challenges you had to face, some maybe mistakes you made going through that, because, I'm sure it wasn't all just roses and rainbows for you. I'm sure there were some tough times where you were, moving up or taking on these responsibilities that you probably maybe weren't getting credit for the way you thought, things like that. So what kinds of challenges did you face going through that process?
Yeah, so the biggest challenge that I faced, I think hands down the biggest one, was being one of the team members and then becoming the leader over those guys. So you have to get their buy-in. You have to really work to establish that relationship to where they're like, they no longer see you as one of the guys, but they see you as this authority figure now that, has the potential to help their career or hurt their career. And so, one of the main ways I overcame that challenge was, I'm pretty sure most people in the SDR community are familiar with Morgan Ingram. So Morgan and I had connected really when he first started his transition from SDR to SDR manager. He started making lots of content. And I started following his content and watching it. And so as soon as I got that manager role, I said, I've got to reach out to Morgan. I've got to talk to him and figure out, what do I do? What are the right next steps? And so Morgan gave me really good advice of just sitting down with each individual SDR, saying, hey, what are your concerns? What are your career aspirations? How can I help you? How can I be a servant to you? How can I help your career and train you the right way? And, what do you want to do? And then also, what ideas can you bring to the table? What are some ideas that you have that could change this? And what I found was that gave people a voice. That gave them the ability to see that, hey, I'm not just going to come in here and dictate what we're going to do, but I'm going to take everybody's collective ideas and put it together in everyone's creativity, so everyone has a voice within the team. And that really helped the credibility of me as a leader, but it also showed everybody else that, hey, we can trust him, and we can work with him in this. So that would probably be the main challenge that I had. The next was just learning how to hire and train people. As a team lead, you're not the one that's actually bringing people on. You're not the one saying, like, yes, this is the SDR that we want to bring in the organization. And so I really had to start, leaning on my mentors and my peers to understand, how do I interview? How do I ask the right questions? I know the type of personality I'm looking for, but how do I get that personality to shine through so I can hire them? And so, just there's thousands and thousands of hours of content out there that can help you with this. Maybe this being one of them. Leverage, your relationships on LinkedIn, leverage partnerships or just people around you, your direct managers. You can always learn something from people. So I would say those are probably the biggest two.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that. And I wanted to touch specifically on like management skills real quick before we move on to the next question. Because you mentioned, hiring, you mentioned training. Are there any other like missing pieces that you see a lot of SDRs kind of running into as they start leveling up in their career and kind of moving more into this like leadership position? Are there any missing skills or maybe like things that people need to be aware of as they start going up?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for the business world and moving up in an organization, it's all about relationships. It's all about taking that initiative. And something I always encourage all of my SDRs to do is, you're in a unique position where you're new to a company, you're new to a sales program, you're expected not to know what to do. You're expected not to know, what you're doing. And so it's perfect time in your life to be able to build those relationships with VPs, with C-level executives, with whoever's around you, with your account managers, with your managers, whatever. Go out, build into the company, build those relationships with people, because you never know when you're going to need them. You can, it's the business world is such a small world, really, when you think about it. And the relationships you make as an SDR can really help push you on. But it also gives, people love to teach other people a skill or something to do. So it really opens the door for a really strong relationship with you and somebody in a senior position, as you're becoming their protege, and you're just absorbing everything that they're telling them, and then you're applying that. I think that's the most important thing is, to then take that info and then apply it to what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the things that, like, it can be intimidating at first, right? Like, you're this fresh SDR, you don't know anything, maybe you're 2 feet away from the VP of sales office, but you're too scared to even look at that door, because you're like, well, what if he sees me? What if he notices me? And then I messed up, I did something wrong. Like, that's a pretty normal thing to go into an unknown environment with that kind of mindset. So, yeah, I think you pointing that out is huge. Like, you just really need to, like, take that step, reach out to that person. It's funny because as an SDR, you're used to getting rejected all the time, right? But then as soon as it's like a relationship that you quote unquote really care about or really matters for your job, it's a whole different ballgame. And for some reason that skill just like won't translate unless you really sit down and focus on, hey, I learned how to reach out to VPs and C-levels as an SDR. I just need to do the same thing at my job. This should be easier. And once you say that to yourself, that process does, become easier.
Yeah, right. And it's just like prospecting, right? Find something interesting with that person that you have in common with them, bring it up in conversation, and then lead it into the conversation that you want to have, take that personalized approach.
Yeah. So I actually wanted to get to that, Matt, on some maybe final tips for someone who is either an SDR team lead or maybe is an SDR that's aspiring to really get into management and really to start managing and growing their own team. What advice, tips, nuggets would you give somebody to really help level their game and also make sure that they don't run into pitfalls or obstacles that they can avoid?
Yeah, I love this question because this is something I learned early in my career, thankfully. But it was find some area that you can be an expert in and be that go-to person for that. For me, it was SalesLoft, where I've just always been at a company that uses SalesLoft. And I really dug into it. I learned how to build automation. I learned what a cadence was. I learned how, I did lots of research on how do I have effective messaging? How do I have, how do you do lead flow within SalesLoft? How do you do these different things? And you become that go-to to where everyone in the organization starts coming to you. That kind of led to my last role. I was the admin for SalesLoft for the Americas. So for the entire company, I was the go-to SalesLoft guy, but I was also a manager. And that's really strong whenever you're that expendable. You're not expendable to the company, right? It's like they see you as that go-to person that, hey, he can answer this question. So find something, whether that's a tool, whether that's a process, or whether that's just you being a leader out on the floor or motivating the people around you. Do something that's going to make you stand out and be different from the crowd.
Yeah, I love that. And that's the whole point of being an SDR, right? You got to stand out from the crowd with your outreach, stand out from the crowd, with your fellow SDRs if you're really trying to move up. I think that's huge for anyone trying to grow their career. Matt, thank you so much for joining us to talk about, your evolution from an SDR to a manager and, what that process is like and all the gold nuggets you gave us on that. For anyone who wants to learn more about you, the work you've done, or learn more about RealPage, where can they find you?
Check me out on LinkedIn. I I'm one of the very rare people now in 2020 that only has one social media account, and that's LinkedIn. I don't like to cloud my time and my efforts on other platforms. So just on LinkedIn, you can find me on there. There's a lot of videos and stuff that I've done in there as well.
Awesome. Sounds good. Easy enough to find you. Only one place.
Yep.
Perfect. This has been Alex and Grayson for the SDRealness podcast with Matt Reuter. Until next time, SDRs, keep it real.